So we're here with Debbie Reid, who is the CSR manager at RAB Outdoor and Low Alpine. Debbie, how are you?
I'm good, thank you very much. I'm enjoying the fine weather, which makes a nice change for us here in Derbyshire.
Yeah, it does. Like, the fine weather is all well and good, unless you're in just a sealed box like I am at the moment. But that is fine. We'll get outdoors later on. So I was really interested to speak to you because you're kind of in the thrall of going on this journey of how to become a more sustainable outdoor company. You've already gone X far, but you've got a long way to go. What are how far have you gone so far with being climate neutral, and what have been some of the trials and tribulations to get to the point where you are now?
Yeah, it's a good question. And instantly you highlight some of the challenges around terminology and how far do we need to go. We decided at the beginning of 2020 to sort of embark on this, it's a cliche, but a journey. It's the easiest way to explain it. And we wanted to understand what our environmental impact was, which for us was around really starting that journey on what does climate reduction look like, how do we calculate it, what do we count, where do we start, what's the terminology. And that's when we decided to go down this route of initially getting to climate neutral as part of a long-term journey to get to net zero. So climate neutral is where we have calculated all of the emissions that we produce as a business in all of our operations, have that verified by a third party, because sadly they don't trust me just to count it and write a number down. They need people cleverer than me to double check those numbers. What we do from then is get that figure verified, and then we balance that amount of carbon we produce with some really great credential offset projects that are verified, they're very reputable, and they actually deliver measurable benefits themselves. So having calculated our emissions, balancing them against these offset projects, that's what allows us to declare ourselves a climate neutral company. We do that with our partner South Pole. That is part of our journey to net zero. And for us to get to net zero, again, part of the requirement that South Pole will allow us to say we're on this journey to net zero is that not only do we offset and we declare ourselves climate neutral, but we need to have a really good path to get to net zero. So we need a reduction target, we need goals in place, we need to be ambitious, we need to be challenging, and we need to be able to publish our data, and we need to be able to show improvement year on year. So we can't just make a statement, and you can't just rely on my numbers. We need someone else to sort of be checking and double checking our maths and what we're doing.
So a lot of these conversations will be going on at, I would assume, every outdoor brand that there is. How long were the conversations going on at RAB and Low Alpine? And was it a quick decision? I imagine they're not easy decisions to come to say, let's try and hit this target by this point. What if we fail? What about profits, etc., etc., etc.? Was it a difficult thing to do?
I guess quite simply no. We're all seeing the change that's happening out there. So we're all seeing climate change. You know, we joke about the weather, but actually we're experiencing incredible heat in the UK today. Last week I was debating putting my winter duvet back on. And we're in July, so you see those, temperature changes day on day. We hear the news about what's happening in Canada with crazy heat out there. We've got flooding in Northern Europe. So we recognise as outdoor people that this is happening. The playgrounds that we spend our time in, the mountains, the glaciers, the ice fields, the coastlines, we're seeing changes on a daily basis. So we knew as a business we had to do something. It's our business, it's where we spend our time, and it's where future generations are going to need to live. So once we decided we needed to do something, it was more a question of how do we do it? And you're right, it can be totally daunting. We could have sat there and spent a long time trying to decide what to do. We could have gone to lots and lots of different people, and we could have taken the next 3 or 5 years coming up with project plans and making sure we got the right answer. We decided that we had to act now. So actually what we did was make a decision and act on it. Calculate our data, make the choice to get to climate neutral, make this ambition to get to net zero, and know that we've probably not got it right, But we would rather act now and start doing something today than wait until we've got everything absolutely right and then miss all these days, months, years of opportunity that we can't afford to, quite frankly.
It's one of those things that we've seen, well, with a pandemic, right? Like it's a day at the start is worth a month at the end. And I feel like it's the same with climate change, that we just, we need to take swift action now. And like you say, it doesn't need to be completely right. Like we're going to get stuff wrong, but swift action is going to save us a lot on the back end. And it's one of the things that we've talked about within the Athlete Climate Academy, and we'll talk about going down the line is, we have to take that action quickly, not to stop climate change. That's happening. Like we can't get away from that. But to mitigate the ramifications of it that we'll eventually have to deal with. And the parallels between the pandemic and climate change are vast. And I hope that we learn from it. So you've learned on your journey now to climate neutral. What are you going to take into your next journey? So Rab want to go 2030, net zero. What is net zero, and what have you learned so far you can put towards that next decade?
Yeah, one of the things we've learned is this is way too complicated. And I think trying to communicate and engage to people has been one of the really, really challenging things that we've done. So in terms of what we've learned, it's to try and talk more simply about things, to try and be more open and more honest about what we're doing. So you'll see, on our website, we've just tried to break it down into almost bite-sized chunks for people to understand. But that journey to net zero is about us now taking the data that we've calculated from our climate neutral position, year on year, coming up with reduction activities to reduce those emissions. And essentially, we're trying to eradicate every piece of unnecessary carbon emissions that we're producing as a business until we get to the point that there is only the absolute essential emissions left that we absolutely need to run our business that are totally unavoidable. Once we've got to that point, we can offset those using only removal projects. So removal projects are the ones that actually remove carbon from the atmosphere, like forestry or moorland projects. Once we get to that point, that's when we can be declared net zero. But that requires a whole heap of activity between now and then. Some of the things we know we can do, so, minimising the impact of our packaging, minimising the impact of some of our materials and replacing virgin with recycled materials where we can. Some things we just don't know yet. The technology's not there, the government infrastructure's not there, so we haven't got all the answers. But as I said before, we know we can influence and change the things that we can. We need to do that first. And one of the things we've built into our programme is almost a pause and reflect moment in 2025, where we will stop, look at where we've got to, look at how the whole environment has changed since then, and then refocus and hope then that there's some innovation, there's more government influence, there's more creativity, there's more partnership working, and actually that will help us in those next 5 years. And if I'm honest, it might take us another 8 years from then to get where we want. We might get there quicker. We don't know. But we need to start somewhere and just influence the things we can now.
And it's so daunting how complicated it is. Climate change is one of those, I think one of the reasons it's taken us so long to kind of get to grips with it, I still don't think we have totally got to grips with it, is that it influences absolutely everything. Absolutely everything. So, you talk about some of the things, some of the strides you've made so far, and whether that's in, the recycled down that, putting into the microlight jackets, or, in the outdoor industry, I see polybags being used quite a lot. That's something we can change. And you might think that, polybags, plastic ends up in the ocean, so that's how it's damaging the environment. But plastics are made from fossil fuels that come from crude oil, that come from the ocean. So, there's always a link back, and it's always climate change. There's always that thing. So I think that you're right to kind of go on that journey and take it step by step, because this technology is moving so quickly. Carbon capture is moving really quickly. What we can do in new materials. We talked about bamboo fleece instead of plastic fleece. How do you think the outdoor industry is going to start to embrace those new technologies going forward?
So I think there's a lot that's happening already. And, you talk about sort of, just plastics there. With things like polybags, us working together as an industry to not eradicate polybags, but to use them and treat them as a valuable resource, not a waste product. And I think that's one of the things we need to do as an industry, is look at where we currently have waste that we should be treating as a resource. So if we can use polybags for what they're designed for, to protect our garments, the environmental impact is in the damage of those garments, not in the 11-gram polybag. But at the end of the polybag's natural life, so when it gets to the retailer outlet, we want to then save it and recycle it, not allow it to get into the rivers and the coastal areas that we absolutely don't want it to be. But if we capture it and reuse it, as an industry, we can have a huge influence on the recycle and circular economy of polybags. So a really, really simple example, but I think there's things as an industry we can absolutely be doing. I mean, you touched on things like, recycled down. We started using recycled down last year. There's absolutely no quality difference between the recycled down that we're using and the virgin down that we previously used. We're saving that from being a waste product filling up landfill. So, there's a win-win there for us. And we're already seeing many of our partners, our material partners, are already developing new products, new biomaterials, bioplastics, more and more recycled materials. Zips and trims are something that we're starting to see, more and more recycled material coming through there. It's going to take time. And one of the things, our brands, one of the things we won't compromise on is the technical performance of our products. So we won't ever downgrade our products in order to use a more sustainable material, because for us the most sustainable product is the one that actually performs to the level that you expect it to. So we'll work with our partners until we get that right quality level, and that's when we'll put it in our products, hence the microlight and the pure down example.
I think that goes back to the essence of what it is to be an outdoor manufacturer and trying to achieve as much of like net zero as possible, because you can't ask people to go into the alpine and wear stuff that's compromised. It's just not right to do. So taking as much carbon from your workflow as possible is the right thing to do, until you come to a point where you say, right, we can't trim any more off. And I don't think anyone's going to be pointing at these companies in the outdoor industry and say, well, you haven't got to complete zero carbon, like no carbon emissions. I think everyone knows, like, manufacturers manufacture stuff like plastics and carbon and other things. They come from that. But it's all that extra stuff on top that we could do so much more to take away, that whether it's for profit or for the work of it, or maybe ignorance. And I don't use ignorance as a bad term. I'm ignorant of lots of things, but perhaps we just don't know that we could be doing better, right? The outdoor industry could just be naive to all that. Do you think it is, or do you think it's something else?
So I think one of the things that helps the outdoor industry is our consumer base, who are actually pretty passionate, pretty educated, pretty challenging. They keep us on our toes. So we can't afford to get slack. You look, back through the years, things like the responsible down standard was something which the outdoor industry adopted at one of the earliest points. And then you look at, other industries have now followed suit. Things like the Microfiber Consortium, that originated from the European Outdoor Group. We're all members of that, and now you've got other fashion houses now joining that group. The Single-Use Plastics Group, also run by the EOG. So I think as an industry, we're constantly challenged by our consumers. So that stops us becoming complacent. On a daily basis, we're being challenged about, whatever was in the news yesterday, how are we reacting and responding to it? There is a challenge for us to communicate that back and not just assume that our consumers expect we're doing the right thing. So for us to be able to relay back and, whether it's, a session like this, whether it's, we run sort of things like breakfast sessions, trying to speak to retailers, trying to speak to the industry, press releases, websites, social media, but trying to reassure consumers that these are the things we're doing, and we're doing them with best intent, with the information we have today. And as we all know, things change on a daily basis, but all we can ever do is the best that we can do today based on the information and facts we have to hand.
So going forward over the next 10 years on your journey, and don't give away any trade secrets from Rab, but what do you think are going to be the big changes in the outdoor industry? What kind of new tech is coming through that you think is really interesting? Is there a new type of material you think is going to pave the way in a different way of thinking about stuff? Like I say, don't give away anything too secret, but have you got anything for us?
Yeah, no one's watching this, are they?
No, probably not, actually.
I think for us, and this is an industry challenge, it's end of life product. We really need, as an industry, to understand how we're going to address end of life. We have a product coming out this next season, Arc Eco Jacket, a sort of waterproof jacket. It's made of a monopolymer material, 100% polyester, designed to be recycled at end of use. Challenge we've got is we haven't really got many locations that you as a consumer can go and recycle that product yet. Right. If I wait until we have the right recycle technologies around, then we've had another 5 years worth of that jacket being on the market. So we're currently designing product, even though for an end-of-life solution that isn't quite there yet. We know it's coming, we're working with partners and there's testing and we know it's there, we know it's proven. There's just the availability and the cost at the moment stops it being at every street corner. But that's the sort of thing I think where as an industry we need to be working together, because we have to be developing now for that end of life. But we need support externally as well for research, funding, availability, that technology improvement. So I think that's really one of the big things. You see a lot at the moment around higher higher systems, lease systems. I think there is possibility for that, but it's got to be the right products in the right marketplace. And probably the right consumer as well. I'm not sure the consumers are quite ready for that yet, so there's a consumer push there. And the other thing which we've started doing, and I know a number of other brands are doing as well, is really starting to look at how can we repair and resell products which maybe aren't first quality products. But actually, if you repair them in such a way, you make them unique and you add value in that way. So we've launched our second stitch products in local markets for now, but they're working really well. And I think that continuation of encouraging consumers to continue to love and have that emotional attachment to their products. The most sustainable product is the product you already own. So actually, how do you prolong the life of that? And I think we're going to see more and more examples of that, different ways of prolonging life, extending life, and actually different end-of-life solutions. I think that coupled with the material development that we are seeing, and there's lots of amazing, creative, innovative materials coming through, but we kind of need all these things to align. We need all those planets to be lined up to get to the point where consumers are comfortable buying new products and know that whole life cycle has been considered.
Well, as an astronomer, I appreciate that analogy of the planets lining up. But I think you've hit the nail on the head where you say solutions to these problems are never going to be one thing. We look for silver bullets in things, and we look for a solution that's just let me buy that thing, or let me do this way, and it'll all work itself out. But in the outdoor industry, in life in general, it's going to be such an amalgamation of lots and lots of little tiny things that end up doing something good, I think.
Yeah, I think it's all of us taking accountability and responsibility as well. I think as a brand, we absolutely have to. I think as a consumer, I have to think about what I'm buying, and do I need it, and how long will I have it for, and what happens to it, and how will I treat it through its life. I think retailers need to think about how they are encouraging and supporting that journey of a product. So I think we've all got to take that accountability. We can't, I think you mentioned it earlier, we can't just finger point at each other. This is about us all having a sort of shared behavioural change to address these challenges.
I certainly agree. Debbie, good luck on the next decade, your journey towards net zero. Diolch yn fawr iawn. Thank you so much. I'll see you again soon.
Thank you very much. Take care.